Hey you guys, IRENE LYON here. Welcome to this video, welcome to this channel. If you're watching this on YouTube, thank you for being here. Be sure to subscribe so you get these videos as they come out. If you're watching this not on YouTube, head over there so you can subscribe to this channel. That would mean the world to me. Thank you. What I want to talk about today, it's something that is so not linear and so not cut and dry, black and white, but I'm going to try my best to teach this. What I want to talk about today is something called regulation. Someone asked me the other day, what actually is nervous system regulation? This is sort of my goal as a somatic practitioner, therapist, teacher of all things neuroplasticity and healing trauma. We want each and every single human being, I know this is a big asking, but I would love for all humans on this planet to find nervous system regulation. Sadly, I know that is never going to happen, at least in my day and age, and this is not being pessimistic, but this is a big job. And the reason why is because nervous system regulation is not something that we can just quick fix overnight or even in a year. It takes, first of all, a willingness of the person to actually understand what this is, which is why I'm talking about it today. And then it requires doing the work. And the work ain't easy. The work is sometimes hard, it's sometimes challenging, it doesn't always feel very good. And I don't say this to scare you, but more to just provide perspective. One of my main teachers, the body of work I've studied lots, but one of them is something called somatic experiencing, and it's the work of Dr. Peter Levine. I've talked about Peter in other vlogs. I will link them below this video, so you can check those out after this one. But he said, quite a few times, he said this. He said, true human enlightenment, for him, this is his opinion, and I concur with it, true human enlightenment will only happen when all human beings on this planet, that's a lot of us, have a regulated nervous system. So what does that mean? First of all, I think this is kind of brilliant because we throw out this idea of enlightenment, and really what does that mean? It doesn't mean that we can levitate and be free of thoughts, because we could be free of thoughts, but we also could be in shock, right? Or in shutdown due to trauma. And this is something else that I touch on in another article that I've written on meditation and mindfulness, which I will post below this as well. But here's the thing. Our nervous system, our autonomic nervous system, this is what governs our fight, flight, and freeze responses. So our survival instincts. So I'm going to keep it real simple right now. Our survival instincts. That is our autonomic nervous system, governed by something called the sympathetic nervous system. That's the fight, flight, right? Get out of here, fight. When there's a threat, when we're feeling helpless, when we have a stressor, our body undergoes a neurophysiological, neurochemical cascade of things that allows us to preserve and protect our brain, our safety, our organs, all of it. This is a good thing. We want this. The other thing that our autonomic nervous system does is it's what allows us to eat a hamburger or eat some fish or vegetables or drink a glass of water or a beer or whatever it is, and digest that stuff without thinking about it, right? That's why it's called autonomic, automatic. So needless to say, this autonomic nervous system is very important. We could not function without it. Think about that. We can function without parts of our brain. We can function without parts of our spinal cord working. We can function without limbs, without a kidney. Parts of our liver can be missing. We can be deaf, blind, all these things. And we can still function, but we need this autonomic nervous system. This idea of the nervous system, this system being regulated, means that when it is hot, we sweat. When it's cold, we shiver or we seek shelter. When we're hungry, we have the cue of hunger. When we are full, we stop eating. When we notice a threat or a large bang, we react and we startle and we orient to it. It also is what allows us, when we notice that that large threat or bang, or what we perceive to be a threat, is not a threat, I'm pretending that there's a threat here, that we then go back to baseline. Here's the thing. When we're born, our nervous system, our autonomic nervous system, and other parts of our nervous system, all of us pretty much, our central nervous system, which is our brain and spinal cord, and our sensory motor, what allows us to do, fine movement of our hands and arch our spine and walk and talk, that isn't working either when we're born. Parts of our autonomic nervous system, they are working. Only part that really works when a baby is born is one branch of their autonomic nervous system called the parasympathetic nervous system, specifically the one that goes into shutdown, the one that shuts us down when we have stress. There's a reason for this. It's because when we're born, we haven't developed our higher brain. We haven't developed the capacity to self-soothe ourselves, to interact, to engage. We're really new and fresh. So we learn how to be human, how to have a healthy, regulated nervous system by way of interacting with other healthy, regulated nervous systems, which we hope are our parents or a caregiver or a nanny. Here's maybe where you're seeing this is a bit of a problem right now in our world. Many babies, many of us, were born into situations where our parents, our primary caregivers, were not healthy in their regulation. It's just the way it is. Trauma, right, that those parents had. Many were born into threatening environments, war, for instance, natural disasters, where we're born and maybe mom and dad are healthy, but they're stressed because there's something bad going on. So there's all these layers to how we build a healthy nervous system in a human being, and I've also talked about that in another vlog that I will link below this on how to build healthy humans. I go into the detail a little bit more. In terms of healthy regulation, it starts when we're really young. It starts in those first 3 years where we are learning as little ones how to self-soothe by pinging, literally feeling and relating and being in this environment with another human being who's older, who offers us some form of safety. Again, if that individual is not safe and that baby perceives them as a threat or there's abuse or trauma, that baby is going to shut down. It's going to shut down, and its autonomic nervous system is not going to work as well as it could. Because humans are so malleable, and I use that word malleable, they will adapt. The adaptation does not mean that it's good adaptation. It just means that it's adaptation. And they can adapt into a nervous system that is unregulated, that is not healthy, that is what we call dysregulated. These are the kids that when they go to school eventually, or the babies that are colicky, the babies that have trouble with acid reflux, the ones that can't, that either sleep too much or never sleep, the ones that are very fussy, the ones that have sensitivities left, right, and center. It's because that autonomic nervous system has sent out a signal to the entire stress chemistry of the body, to all the other systems that are impacted by those adrenal chemicals and the cortisol chemicals. Something is wrong here. We need to go into lockdown mode and preserve. And a human being is not meant to be in preservation mode. We're not meant to go into hibernation the way some animals can. We're meant to have lots of good oxygen, lots of good blood going to all of our systems, and we're meant to be engaged with in a way that is healthy, safe, kind, empathetic, and curious, right? This is what forms a healthy, regulated nervous system. So what you might be wondering is, shit, Irene, I didn't have that. And first of all, the good news is that we can change that. You can change that. This is what neuroplasticity is. Again, I've talked about this in other vlogs that I will link. The one thing you need to understand is that you can change this, you can shift this. Depending on your age, it might be easier to shift and rewire. Those that are younger, like under the age of 30, 40, a little easier. If you're in your 20s, please get onto this rewiring train now before you end up in your 60s with a chronic illness. When we're older, I will admit, I've seen in my work with people, it's a little trickier because you've had that many more decades of strengthening that dysregulation, right? It can't just change overnight. So if I come back to the thesis of this, what is nervous system regulation? A lot of people get this confused with relaxation. They'll say, I just want to be relaxed and calm. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but I'm interested in knowing, under that calm, is there this inferno of chaos, of coping, of overriding, of strategies that a person has had to bring on board to stay safe throughout their entire lifehood? If that is true, we actually want to slowly get under that false sense of calm. And this is so common in our culture. So I'm not, saying that this is a bad thing. It's just what we've had to do to cope. It's what parents have to do to keep moving forward, even though they're so stressed and they're trying to do better for their kids. But if underneath that calm, that sort of facade, that mask, is this chaos, we need to slowly start to educate that chaos that it can slowly be released. And I'm sort of simplifying this, but we want to make that individual know that they can have a greater capacity to have a little more space in their system to feel some of that chaos. So some of the first things that we want to do, other than education and understanding what this nervous system regulation thing is how can we become more biologically embodied? How can we really listen to what's going on in our physiology? And again, this is something that takes time, something that I teach in my work. But it's as simple sometimes as just noticing your biological impulses, such as when you're thirsty, when you need to go to the bathroom, when you need to rest, when you feel joy, when you feel anger, when you feel sadness, all the emotions, allowing those emotions to be felt is one of the first steps. Connecting with the body in a way that is very intimate, and I don't mean sexual, I mean just noticing, like, this is me, this is my system. And this is also not just being physical, as in going for a run or going, for a hike or a workout at the gym. This is connection to the physical space in a way that's much more personally intimate and much more self-aware driven, right? So that you're really listening to your physiology. Because if you think of that baby that was really small, that maybe had to shut down and didn't get good regulation, the way that that child survives is it shuts off its body. It doesn't feel it because it feels too much. It doesn't feel good to feel constant threat and constant stress. So it just cuts off that sensation. And then over time, we end up as adults and we don't have this intimate connection with listening to our body, listening to the signals it gives us, listening to when we might be stressed, when we might need help. We kind of numb it, we kind of flatline. The other situation is someone might not feel numb and flatline. They may feel anxious and very panicky. And that's, again, that chaos that's trying to get out and trying to be felt. So what am I trying to say here? I'm trying to say that regulation, nervous system regulation, means having the tolerance to be with the stressors that are in our world and be able to come back to proper human, what we would call homeostasis, health, so that we are reacting appropriately to the stresses that come at us, or reacting such that we don't react. We realize that really isn't a big deal. It also means being able to teach the deeper parts of the system over time how to function in a way that's well. So a lot of my clients come in and they have digestive troubles, and they have been working on their diet, they've been cutting out gluten, they've been doing all these cleanses and elimination diets, and they're still not well. And I say, let's just work on your nervous system. Let's work on expanding the capacity for you to sense and feel, make better decisions about what you do in your day. Not food decisions, but how you listen to yourself, how you listen to when your adrenaline spikes up or when you maybe shut down and dissociate. And what can we do to have that happen a little less? What can we do to make it such that you don't scare yourself over and over and over again, which just kind of flips the switch and creates that chaos of happening. So we want to kind of settle that chaos But before totally settling it, we've got to find out what in the system needs to be addressed. It might be that the system needs to just have a rest and not be going, or it might be that there's a past trauma and there's a ton of rage and a ton of anger and a ton of unresolved fight-flight patterns that need to release, that need to express. So again, like I said at the beginning, this is not cut and dry, it's not linear, because everyone is different. If someone has been living in a lifetime of shutdown and freeze, we need to kind of wake that system up again gently and slowly so that it can literally defrost. If somebody's been living in high arousal, fight, flight, we need to figure out what those fight, flight patterns need to do to fully, what we would call, deactivate and release in a way that's real and biological so that they can come back down to baseline. So there's these two sides of the spectrum. When we can get back down to baseline and react appropriately to the stress in our environment, to our internal stressors, all these things, then we've reached good nervous system regulation. When our digestion works, when we can go to sleep at night, when we can wake up in the morning, when we're not constantly and chronically tight and sore, when we have the capacity to set boundaries, be in good relationship, know when someone might be a threat, know when someone might be friendly and engaging, that is good nervous system regulation. So what I've seen and what my colleagues have seen is when we get this good nervous system regulation back on board, we're not being driven by our stress chemistry, and all the other things tend to fall in place. The brain capacity improves because we're not constantly stressed, right? In other words, again, imagine the stress comes in and it rocks our system so much that we're just in chaos for days or weeks. That brain, that higher brain, it can't think, it can't work, it doesn't want to. It doesn't want to relate in a way that's empathetic. So that's one example. So bottom line, it isn't always just about getting relaxed. It isn't just all about getting an emotion out or eating well. There's all these, it's like three-dimensional. It's the best way I can describe it. But under that three-dimensionality of the human system is this layer of deep nervous system regulation. Many of us never got it from the start, which means we have to build that foundation first through education, through biological embodiment, body awareness, through working at the level of your stress chemistry so that you can notice when things are off and then cognitively bring yourself back and work towards finding more capacity in your system. I could go on and on with more examples, but hopefully this has given you a little sliver of understanding to this autonomic nervous system, the fight, flight, freeze, and how it can become offline due to early dysregulation, so not having it in the first place. And I forgot to mention, having traumas later in life. The interesting thing is that if we got that first baseline regulation at the beginning, we can have quite a bit of stress. We can get into a big car accident. We can have, the loss of a loved one and bounce back. And it's because we have that baseline regulation. So if we didn't have it from the start, things that occur to us later in life, they will impact us more. It'll throw us off a lot easier, a lot faster, and then it's harder to come back. This is why my work is all about the foundations, laying these foundations so that we get that regulation back on board. All right, thank you for being here. Thank you so much for listening and learning. If you know of anyone who may need this video, enjoy this video, need this education, please share it. I would appreciate it. And we will see you in the next video. Take very good care.